happens. This is just information about what is happening in Washington. So that's a *6. And we will have a poll question a little later on regarding Social Security. So please stay tuned to that. Again, this is Bill Huizenga on a Saturday afternoon where this is our second town hall that we are doing this weekend, and glad that we could have thousands of people join us yesterday. We anticipate that we actually have a larger dial even going out today because yesterday was a little more of a senior focus, but we anticipate a number of the same things that are going to be discussed or were discussed yesterday, we will probably end up discussing today as well. So, and again, for those of you joining, and I'm just repeating myself because we have literally hundreds of people that are getting added every few seconds to this. So this is Bill Huizenga, the second telephone town hall. If you have a question, please dial *3 if you would like to ask a question. I cannot guarantee that we are going to get to everyone's question. We won't be able to because we'll have more questions or individuals asking questions than we will have time to hit. However, what we try to do is take those themes, those larger themes that are representative of what people are saying and asking. So, for example, many of the letters that we have been receiving have sometimes, quite honestly, sometimes the exactly worded question, but sometimes it's just the same sentiment. It could be on Social Security, could be on tariffs, could be on DOGE, could be on a number of things. So we're going to be trying to hit all of those, and I'm going to be also doing a sample of some of those. And I know for some of you on the call, you might be surprised that they are not all negative. We actually have some positives as well. And I want to say thanks to Nancy and Kathy and Mary from Douglas. We're going to be taking a few of those samples. In fact, I'm going to start with Mary from Douglas. She had sent in a number of questions, some of it about tariffs, and I suspect that we're going to be getting to that. But there's one in particular I wanted to hit because I know that this will be a pretty consistent theme. She says, I'm 64 and would like to collect the Social Security that I've invested into for 45 years, especially since I'm self-employed, 13 to 15% of my income. And what she means by that, for those of you that aren't self-employed, I have been self-employed actually myself, is typically your employer pays one half or roughly half of your Social Security, and the other half comes out of your paycheck. When you are self-employed, both of those get married up, and you pay all of it into the Social Security Trust Fund, and that income comes off of all out of you as a self-employed person. Mary continues, Trump's attempt to gut the agency's senior members will impact whether payments are made. My husband is collecting. Can you assure seniors you won't touch or gut Social Security or Medicare? So, Mary, obviously you've got a perspective that you're coming from, and that's based on some of the other questions that you have listed out. You declare that it will impact whether payments are made. A couple of things. First and foremost, the budget reconciliation bill that we had passed in the House of Representatives last week does not and cannot touch anything on Social Security because there's something, not to get into all the archaic detail, but the U.S. Senate has something called the Byrd Rule, named after Robert C. Byrd, that you can only do a reconciliation bill when it comes to spending, not policy. So if it's a policy change, it will get washed out of any of the bills. And so Social Security is not part of anything that we have voted on or discussed. Mary, you assert that there's a gutting of agencies. And I know a number of folks, both online and in other letters, have tried to say that is Elon Musk going in and firing people. That isn't the case either. The simple fact is that agency heads, and I've talked to a number of them. I've talked to Sean Duffy at Department of Transportation, Lee Zeldin at the EPA. I've served with Kristi Noem. I served with a number of other people that are cabinet members, and they are the ones that will be and have to make any decisions on the employee level. So that's what's going to be happening. Now, at the end of the day, President Trump has said that he will not cut or touch Social Security or Medicare. That was a pledge he made. That's a pledge that Joe Biden had made. Somebody yesterday was making the comment of, how are you going to balance the budget this year without doing some of those things? Well, first and foremost, we're not going to be balancing the budget this year. In fact, there is no plan that has ever been put out. And yesterday I used this example of Ron Paul, Senator Rand Paul's dad, who was in the House of Representatives. There was no bigger budget hawk that was ever served in the modern era than Ron Paul. Ron Paul had a plan for budget for balance, I should say, that took 3 years for that to happen. We are not going to be in balance in 1 year by any stretch of the imagination. This is going to be a multi-year effort, and we, however, are out of control on our spending. $36 trillion in debt has brought us interest on that debt to exceed everything that we're spending on the Defense Department. It also, if you flip that around, it's more than everything we spend on kids programs and assistance to disabled and all those things. This is basically eaten up almost a third of all the discretionary spending, and what it's doing is it's squeezing out all of these other priorities. Our overall federal spending pre-COVID was about $4 trillion, of which the Congress, the House and the Senate, voted on just under $1 trillion of that. So we were just a little bit over 25% of the budget we would actually vote on. We are now spending as a nation $7.5 trillion. The little piece of news that I'll be giving an update about today is a push to keep the government open with a continuing resolution that is going to be spending just under $1.7 trillion for the rest of this fiscal year. It would be what the amount would be for the entire fiscal year. So that means we have nearly $6 trillion being spent on autopilot. No vote out of the Senate. Gary Peters and Alyssa Slotkin don't vote on it. Bill Huizenga, Hillary Scholten, no member of the House of Representatives votes on it. It just automatically happens. And so we're not going to be doing this in any time super quick. But this is a long journey that we have to go on. So again, I'm going to repeat myself because we've added a couple of thousand people onto this phone call since I last said this. If you have a question, please hit *3. That's *3. You'll be put in contact with one of our screeners, and it may take a minute to get to you on that. And then if you would like to receive the Huizenga Huddle, non-political document that we produce on the official side, that is a *6. So, Mary, I appreciate your letter, your question. We may disagree on some of the premises of that, but nonetheless, I appreciate it. And right before I get to, we're going to go to one of our calling questions. I wanted to read part of a short note. And by the way, many of these are handwritten. Some of them are printed out. We know that these are people with heartfelt feelings, but Nancy writes in just a short note to let you know we're happy with your effort to represent us in our state for our state. We sometimes forget and we get busy with our lives, but we appreciate having someone there to voice our concerns and make our wishes known. So I know that not everybody agrees with Nancy, not everybody agrees with Mary. That was evident yesterday as well. So With that, we're going to go to our first caller. And by the way, yesterday we tried to spread these out around the district. We had a number of calls from Kalamazoo, had a couple of them from Berrien, a couple of them from Ottawa, a couple from Allegan. We're going to try and do that again. So we're going to go to Sarah in Kalamazoo, who is going to ask about, I think, the VA suicide line. So, Sarah, if you're there, please ask your question.
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Sure can, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. My question is, thank you, first of all, for holding this town hall. I would love to see the next one in person, but I'm really grateful that you're holding this one. I'm really concerned about the Department for Veterans Affairs and the number of cuts that have already been made to the staff there, and I'd love for you to stand up to DOJ and Elon Musk and speak out against any more cuts to our veteran services, especially the Veterans Suicide Hotline, which apparently has been destaffed a number of times. Can you stand up to DOJ and speak out against the cuts?
Well, so first, Sarah, let's address the premise of this, and I'm looking at a quote from Doug Collins, who is the Secretary of the VA, who said on February 20, quote, "We did not lay off any veteran crisis lines responders, assuring that those answering the crisis calls remain in place to support veterans in needs." And then on March 7, the Department of Veterans Affairs is granting its Veterans Crisis Line employees a full exemption in its return to office requirements. In other words, if they are working remotely, they can actually continue to work remotely. And then the VA positions ultimately are considered mission critical, including the crisis line, among other roles, and I fully support that. The VA is continuing to hire more than 300,000 mission critical positions that are exempt from the federal hiring freeze, and I think that's part of it. What we need to go in is look to make sure that what is being trimmed back makes sense. That's part of the problem, frankly, Sarah, that we have had with not being able to do the appropriations process properly. It has been a huge frustration for me that we have just continued to do these continuing resolutions, meaning once funding is set, we're just going to take last year's funding and fund it, and there's no way of weeding the garden, so to speak. There's no way of saying, hey, this is working, this is not. But specifically on the suicide prevention, I actually introduced a bill called the Suicide Prevention and Care Enhancement Act to address specifically veteran suicide and mental health. That has been something that I have pushed on for the entire time that I've been in here. So again, Elon Musk is not hiring or firing anybody. That is left up to the department heads and the secretaries. And then there is, and yesterday I was quoted accurately in the AP story that I felt sometimes Elon had tweeted first and then thought about it secondly. And there's had to be some clarification. President Trump has clarified that as well. And I am satisfied with that because we need to have an effort like DOJ to go in and get serious about our waste, fraud, and abuse that has been happening in the federal government. That is separate from very good programs like this. And by the way, I'm the son of a disabled World War II veteran. So I am very familiar with VA and what it has and hasn't done. So we're going to stay kind of down in that southeast corner of the district and Battle Creek. And we're going to go to Stephen, and I think he's got a question about Ukraine. Stephen, go ahead.
Yes, I'm very concerned about what's happening to our ally, Ukraine. I think that we owe it to their democracy to remain an ally and to not cut off funding. I want to know what Congress is going to do to counter what our president is proposing. It's frankly an embarrassment.
Stephen, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So specifically, what do you believe is the embarrassment that that he's trying to force Ukraine and Russia to the negotiating table, or that he's saying we're not going to put additional money? I mean, we've done about $300 billion in aid, which actually outstrips what the Europeans have done. So I'm curious if you could just narrow down exactly what you think ought to be happening. Should we just continue to do tens of billions of dollars in supplemental funding like has been voted on previously? Or what are you looking for?
I think you're not answering my question, sir. I think that no,
I'm
you're
asking
not answering
you
my
what
question.
exactly your
No, I
objective
asked
is.
you first. I ask you first. What is Congress going to do to make sure that we don't abandon our ally, that we don't side with Russia, that we make sure that they still get a program set up where they can not be at the risk of further invasion by Russia, that we give them assurances and that we are not letting our allies down.
Okay, so you hadn't answered my question of what exactly your goal was, but I think you got closer to it on that. So let me lay out a couple of things. First and foremost, Russia invaded Crimea during the Obama administration. Nothing was done on that on his watch. When President Trump came in, their expansion stopped. When he left office under Joe Biden, suddenly the invasion happened again. Joe Biden's words were, it was a, quote, minor incursion. I, from the very beginning, had asked the Biden administration and have public calls for the MiG-29s that were housed in Poland to be sold to the Ukrainians. That was denied by the Biden administration. I publicly suggested that we ought to be sending Javelins, the anti-tank missiles. That too was denied by the Biden administration until, frankly, sir, it was too late. And where we have been going, we've had general assistance that has continued, but then we've had these large supplemental bills. I have voted against all of the supplemental bills because I didn't feel that that Europe was stepping up in the way that it should to defend itself. We all know that they have been woefully behind in their NATO payments, other than the select countries up in the Baltics, as well as basically all of the former Soviet bloc countries like Romania, Poland, and others. Western Europe has been lacking. The new head of NATO and the head of the EU have been talking about the rearming of Europe, and frankly, it's about time. My predecessor spent 4 years in the Netherlands pounding away on the Dutch government about, as ambassador, about them not meeting their NATO goals. I have had numerous conversations with our Canadian neighbors who are at about 1.2 to 1.4% of their spending, which is woefully underneath their obligation. And I'm assuming that, I'm hoping that people have seen the president's statement yesterday about ramping up further sanctions on Russia if they do not stop the bombing. And frankly, sir, I sit on the Financial Services Committee, which is the origin of almost all of those sanctions bills. And the Biden administration's one of their biggest lack of attention in this whole conflict, and one that I pointed out to Anthony Blinken personally in a hearing, was that they were not enforcing the sanctions on Russia, and they were allowing gas and oil to be sold. By the way, Western Europe was one of their main purchasers, and all it was doing was helping to fund the very war that we were then sending money over there to battle against. So it has been a massive contradiction throughout NATO and throughout Europe. And at the end of the day, it's time for this conflict to end. The President Trump, is forcing Volodymyr Zelensky to the table, and he is forcing Putin to the table. and is threatening additional sanctions on Russia, and has said to Ukraine that they need to have some vested interests. And we all saw what happened with the minerals agreement, and now Ukraine is more interested in that. So we're going to move on to David in Van Buren. And before we do that, just a reminder, if you have a question, please press *3, and we will get you into the queue. And so, David, I think you are looking to, sorry, I have to grab my glasses, protect telehealth and Medicaid. So, David, are you there?
Yes. I have a couple of questions. Number one, I read an article that Trump signed an executive order eliminating telehealth payments under Medicare, effective, I think it was April 1st, except for like mental health. I don't understand how that is in any way, shape, form saving any money. If I don't have a telehealth, if Medicare does not pay for a telehealth program, that means I'm going to go to the doctor. So you can say I saved X number of million by not paying for telehealth, but you're paying for it for the doctor's office. And in the meantime, when I'm at the doctor's office, I'm being exposed to all sorts of diseases in the doctor's office, which may end up with more trips to the doctor's office. So I don't, when you talk about you're not touching Medicare and Medicaid, yeah, you are touching it if you cut that service off. And number two, it's not saving any money to do that. It's going to cost you more money.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I'm forgetting it's David, right? I think Dave. So this is news. I have not heard of any similar ban. In fact, we've been going the opposite way, and I personally have voted to extend telehealth flexibilities number of times. And here's one of the reasons why. So when I was in the Michigan State Legislature, and just before that, when I worked for my predecessor, I was his district director here in Michigan. I served on the board of something called the Michigan Rural Health Association. And the Michigan Rural Health Association was run through MSU. It's a flow-through mostly of federal funds that then goes out and services to all of the FQHCs, they're called, Federally Qualified Healthcare Centers. They are these areas where we have pretty large clinics that are too far away from a traditional hospital, or as we've seen, smaller rural hospitals close down. These clinics have been in. We have been expanding telehealth, and if there is one thing. There's not many positives I've found out of COVID, but if there is a positive silver lining coming out of COVID with this, is the expansion of telehealth has allowed the healthcare industry to be more efficient. And as you point out, we're seeing more home health care, whether it's end of life, certainly, but people that have chronic diseases and can't travel and those kinds of things. That has been something that we have been working on, and we've all heard of MAGA, right? But we've also this new one, MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. President Trump established a Make America Healthy Again commission, which I believe expands telehealth. So it is the direction where we need to go, one of the directions we need to go, and frankly is one of those efficiencies that I believe we need to utilize to deliver more with the same tax dollar. That's something that's big. So I do know that the continuing resolution that we voted on, the intention from coming out of the Energy and Commerce Committee is to include certain telehealth extenders, meaning, in other words, if there's an exemption or some of those things, that would be something that would be in there. So that we'll stay tuned on that. I appreciate it.
What is Congress doing to protect that health. I mean, Trump is writing up executive orders left and right, and Congress is doing nothing. You're all sitting back with your thumbs up your butt, and he's doing whatever he wants, and you're not exerting your authority of the controller of the purse. And so when I read articles that say he's cutting telehealth, I agree 100% that it makes no sense, but he's doing it, and you guys aren't trying to stop him.
Well, sir, you haven't given any evidence that he is actually doing it. In fact, I've given you evidence to the opposite. And what will happen is we will have our appropriations.
The other thing I want to bring up, I just listened to your last caller on Ukraine, and the more I listened, the madder I got. I feel that Trump, is undermining Ukraine and giving all the cards to Russia. And so to sit back and say that Trump is trying to force them onto the negotiating table is pure nonsense. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous that you're sitting there cutting them off at the knees and say, well, I'm trying to get him to the table to negotiate. I've already been to Russia, and whatever Russia wants, Ukraine isn't even invited to the discussion. So, no, Trump is not trying to get it to the negotiating table. Trump is trying to give away Ukraine. And the fact that Trump keeps talking about $300 billion in aid to Ukraine has been totally debunked several times. It's a lot closer to half of that, and a lot of that money hasn't even been spent yet. So I 100% disagree with your comments that we're trying to get to the negotiating table and Trump is doing everything he can to get them there. That's bullshit.
Okay. Well, so, and that sounds like you just hung up on yourself, which is a good idea. Volodymyr Zelensky has been included in the negotiations every step of the way. He was the one, if you watch the full 45 minutes of his theatrics in the White House, he was the one that squirreled the mineral deal, and now has decided he wants to come back. I had an opportunity to sit across the table from Zelensky, and those that were listening in yesterday know this. I sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I had traveled to Europe for the 80th anniversary of D-Day with a very large contingent, which included former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I was invited into a small meeting with Zelensky, of which he was about 45 minutes late. The tone was interesting because almost all the people there, and it was about 2/3 Democrats, 1/3 of us Republicans. I was the only person in the room who had voted against the $60 billion supplemental that had just passed. And I felt an obligation to address that. And I said to President Zelensky, presumably your staff is good and has let you know who has done what in the room. And if they haven't, I want to be clear. I was one of those votes against sending the supplemental, and I felt, sir, that you needed to hear directly from me why. And I proceeded to tell him that we needed to have more assurances that he was battling corruption. It is widely known that Ukraine has been the most corrupt country, certainly in the Western Hemisphere and Europe and the Western world, but maybe the most corrupt in the entire world. So what were his assurances on the anti-corruption? We needed audits. We needed assurances of where equipment was going and where money was going, because there has been less than crystal clear paths of where all this money has gone. In fact, in fall of 2024, the DoD report found over $1 billion in U.S. arms to Ukraine have never been accounted for. $1 billion. All right? Oversight's been limited. And at the end of the day, this war needs to end. And we're going to disagree, sir. You sound like you want to continue to fund it. You want to see additional Ukrainian and Russian lives lost. I don't want to see European lives lost. I don't want to see American lives potentially getting pulled into this. And it is enough. And unfortunately, not everybody believes that. but President Trump is leading that charge, and I believe he's going in the right direction. So appreciate the input, despite your inability to control your tongue. So John in Allegan wants to talk veteran care. So John, go ahead.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for hosting this town hall, first off. I'm a disabled veteran, and I've got two questions for you. First and foremost, the VA is expected to receive 15%, up to 15% staff cuts and a major budget cut on top of that. What are you in Congress doing to guarantee that my care remains consistent at my local VA despite 15% costs or 15% budget or personnel cuts? Additionally, what are you doing to curb and stop aggressive executive oversight? And I'll give you an example, firing several inspectors general unjustly and without proper notice.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, John, I appreciate your service. Which branch did you serve in?
I was in the Air Force.
Air Force. Okay. I'm sorry. Are you fully disabled, or is it a partial disability?
I'm at partial disability. I'm at 80%, and I use the Kalamazoo VA frequently.
Okay. That was going to be one of my other questions, was because we have some in Kentwood, Battle Creek, obviously, but you go to Kalamazoo, you said?
Battle Creek, sorry.
Yes. Okay. So that's what I thought. So again, Doug Collins, who is the head of the VA, is actually an Air Force veteran himself. I served with him. He was a congressman from Georgia, and the VA is not cutting so much as reallocating, and it's reallocating from the quote-unquote non-essential initiatives to focus on healthcare benefits and services, and we talked a little bit about that, about suicide prevention and some of the things that we've done.
Considered, sorry to interrupt you, Senator. Can I ask what's being considered non-essential in this case? I utilize several services at the VA that aren't directly related to physical health care, so what is non-essential in this case?
So, and first, while I appreciate you attempting to use a honorific or a title, please just call me Bill. I mean, this is John and Bill having a good conversation. So,
understood.
All right. So that is what's being left up to those, like the head of the VA or the head of the Department of Transportation. What we do know is that the federal government, and you know this, the federal government declares some of its workers essential, some of them non-essential. It's not a great or perfect any kind of delineation, because we had this during government shutdowns where we've got essential workers coming in and quote unquote non-essentials aren't allowed to. Where a lot of the focus has been in this last administration is there has been a real focus in putting money into programs regarding DEI, that diversity, equity, inclusion, having that be a focus where they are spending money on programs that's going in and trying to push that particular, I would argue, a political narrative. And the VA continues to hire for more than the 300,000 mission-critical positions that are, again, exempted from the federal hiring freeze. So there's been a freeze that's been put in place. We know that some of those probationary employees have been let go. Some of them, if they are viewed as more mission-critical, have been brought back. And when it's a provisionary, that means sometimes it's that first year or sometimes 2 years of them being there. And so, John, again, if you heard me, I'm the son of a disabled World War II veteran who nearly lost his life in Italy during World War II. I've seen him access it, and I've seen the problems that he had accessing the VA. And you, if you're in there utilizing it at any kind of level, you know that there's some things that they do that are just great. And then there are some things that just drive you crazy. And I know this because for 14 years, I've been having a full-time caseworker working on VA issues, and and we've got to figure out a way how we're going to improve that. And I'm committed to making sure that those critical things like your health care, both physical and mental health care, are getting funded and taken care of. What I'm less concerned about is whether we're going to be doing a study in some DEI corner of the VA that isn't really ultimately delivering you care. And more flexibility so that you have the ability. This is one of the things that I've been fighting for over a number of years, is to give guys like you the ability to go and have more flexibility, especially in more rural areas. I think you're in Allegan, so
yes,
you're close. You could either go to Kentwood or you could go down to Battle Creek, kind of depending on what you need. But you get up north, and not everybody's got that option, right? But they have to then travel, sometimes 3-4 hours down to Grand Rapids to be able to get their care, when they could go, if they had the ability to have more flexibility with their TRICARE or with one of the other programs coming out of the VA, they'd have the ability to go see a doctor locally up in Traverse City or something like that. So that's my assurance to you, John, is that I'm very cognizant of where that aid needs to go, and it needs to go to guys like you who deserve care. So appreciate the call very much, and appreciate your service, and blessings to you on that. We're going to go to Jennifer in Kalamazoo. I think Jennifer is looking to discuss USAID.
Hello?
Go ahead, Jennifer, are you there? Yep, go ahead.
On the local news this morning, there was conversation about local food pantry programs not getting their funding through USAID. And I have great concerns about that. Here in Kalamazoo, Kalamazoo Loaves and Fishes provides wonderful services to very needy people. What is being done to reinstate those monies?
Well, appreciate it, Jennifer. But USAID actually is not a domestic food program. That's run through the State Department, and it's a foreign aid program that has been, and if they have moved into any kind of domestic, and I know there have been some advocacies, mostly surrounding, again, DEI. There's been some advocacy things that have been utilized here in the United States, which they're not supposed to do. I mean, the USAID is literally intended for foreign governments, foreign situations. So we see this with Food for Peace program. We see this for other programs throughout Africa, for example, or in Latin America. This is delivering vaccines that might be in different places. This is not intended for a food bank in Kalamazoo or anywhere else. It's intended USAID. There's other federal programs that help that out, but that is not intended for what it's supposed to be. I mean, it's the USAID by definition is global initiative and other things that have happened with AIDS work and that kind of stuff that has been intended for foreign consumption.
Mm-hmm. Would you, though, please look into the funding cuts that have affected these food provisions?
Absolutely, and actually we talked to them. I have visited down in Kalamazoo. There's been a new food bank that has been opened up relatively recently in Battle Creek. Mm-hmm. We've been there. I've been there personally. I'm very involved with our own food banks and missions up here in Ottawa County and other places that I've represented. So that's a place where my wife and I do our personal giving, quite honestly. Whether it's Kids Food Basket and other places like that. I mean, these are very important things. But I will absolutely take a look at what you were talking about and look for that article. I'm assuming it was in one of the Kalamazoo papers. So
this was actually on television this morning, Channel 3. Okay. So WWM.
All right.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Well, Yep, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, I think we've got one online here as well, and do want to remind everybody about if you have a question, it's *3 if you have a question, or *6 if you would like to join the Huizenga Huddle and get a pretty regular note from us and a little bit of news on that. We are going to be doing a poll question here shortly. We've had some questions about Social Security and Social Security benefits. We've heard a few of those folks that have been talking about it. Earlier, I read from some letters, and I'm going to read one from Sally in Zealand about reducing or eliminating Social Security for hardworking Americans, as she says, while keeping your cushy government retirement, health insurance, and pay for the remainder of your life, right? Not to get into all the details, Sally, but that is not accurate, actually, how as a federal employee, I don't retain my health insurance for life, and I don't retain my pay for the remainder of my life. I am in the same, it's called a 403B. It's the FERS, Federal Employee Retirement System. Anybody who works at the VA or anywhere else, we are in the exact same government retirement plan that I have to put in money into, and the federal government has an automatic 1% that goes in, but they will then match up to, I believe it's an additional 3% or 4%. So I think it's 3% additional, what makes it a total of 4% that they put in. My health insurance, when I'm done being a member of Congress, my health insurance ends. I, by the way, am on Obamacare through the Washington, D.C. exchange. That is where my family gets its Blue Cross Blue Shield through the Washington, D.C. Healthcare exchange. And once I'm out of Congress, my pay ends. So we don't have that. But I want to get to your point about reducing and eliminating Social Security. Here's the thing. I do not support eliminating Social Security by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, something that I have been working on a bipartisan basis for a number of years is a debt commission that's going to look at all of the various trust funds that we have. And Social Security is the largest and sort of most well-known, but there's something like 22 different trust funds that the federal government runs that are in varying stages of problems and trouble. The Social Security one is a significant problem. In less than a decade, kind of depending on what's going to be happening with people paying in to Social Security and what the economy does. If we have a better economy, it's going to extend it a little more. If the economy gets worse, it's going to make it come and hit it harder. But somewhere between 8 and 9 years, there is going to be a cut to Social Security. This isn't Bill Huizenga saying this. This isn't the Republican Party saying this. This is the Social Security Trust Fund trustees who are saying this. There won't be a vote from Congress. There won't be a declaration from a president. It will simply happen that somewhere around a 21% cut to all Social Security benefits. It'll be a mandatory cut. Medicare Part A will be depleted by 2036, resulting in an 11% cut if we don't do anything. The Social Security becomes insolvent in 2033. All right, so these are impending things that are coming at us. The bipartisan group that we have, it's called the Bipartisan Fiscal Forum. Yes, we chose BFF as the initials very intentionally. I'm the Republican co-chair. A guy named Scott Peters out of California is the Democrat co-chair. We've got liberals, we've got conservatives, we've got moderates. There's a lot of people across the board in both the House and the Senate that are a part of this. On the Senate side, we are working with partners like Angus King, John Curtis, who's a new member, but Peter Welsh from Vermont has been a part of this. We've had very conservative people, Ted Cruz and James Langford and Jim Banks out of Indiana have been a part of this. And we've got the same mix on the House side as well. We passed a bill out of the Budget Committee this last Congress, so we have to reintroduce it and move ahead with it again. But we passed it out of committee. Unfortunately, and I'm not saying anything behind anybody's back, this is all stuff that was talked about into a microphone. Brendan Doyle, who is the ranking member, the Democrat head of the Budget Committee, literally said, well, we've got 9 years before we have a problem. This was last year when he said this. We've got 9 years before we have a problem. Why are we worrying about this now? You know, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill solved Social Security at the 11th hour. That's what's going to happen again. We're wasting our time. AARP came out opposed to having any kind of conversation or a commission that is going to examine this. This commission would give Congress, the House and the Senate, an up or down vote on a set of recommendations that it's making. It's not something that is just going to happen without congressional input. It is bipartisan, bicameral, and that is something that we need to do. Now, the poll question that we're going to take, and we're a little later than what I had been planning on, so hopefully we got a good group of people yet. The poll question is do you support President Trump's proposal to end taxation of Social Security benefits? We've heard from a number of you that are concerned about protecting your benefits and making sure that they're maintained. President Trump has talked about ending the taxation of Social Security benefits. So here's the poll question. If you support ending the taxation of Social Security benefits, please press 1 for yes. If no, you don't support President Trump's proposal to end taxation of Social Security benefits, press 2 for no. All right. So again, do you support the ending of taxing of Social Security benefits? Press 1 for yes. And if you want to continue to tax Social Security benefits, press 2 for no. So we're going to let that populate here a second. Again, just appreciated that what has been expressed so far. So we're going to go to Holly in Calhoun County. I think has a question about the Great Lakes. So Holly, are you there with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Okay. We're doing well,
Good.
thank you, and appreciate you joining us. So go ahead with your question.
Well, I appreciate the call. Protecting the Great Lakes is something that's been worked on for years with the invasive species, which we already have some, but the carp that are in Chicago that they've held back, with all the cuts in their, I can't believe that there won't be cuts to the environment because Mr. Trump doesn't seem to believe in climate change. What are you personally doing to ensure that the Great Lakes are protected? Because it is a big financial thing for the states that are surrounded by them.
Yep, wholeheartedly agree, Holly. And bear with me a second. I'm going to kind of run through a couple of the things that I am doing, and then I'm going to give you a story specifically about the GLRI. Okay, and that's the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. So I am the Republican co-chair. There's two of us, myself and a guy named David Joyce out of Ohio, who are the Republican co-chairs. There's two Democrats. Debbie Dingell from Michigan and Marcy Kaptur out of Ohio. The joke that, and I've said this in front of Marcy, and she's laughed and agreed, Marcy and I would struggle to agree that today is Saturday. We just have very, very different political philosophies and views on things. But Marcy and I work hand in glove when it comes to the Great Lakes. On the task force. The task force, we are dealing with algae blooms. We're dealing with invasive species. We're dealing with PFAS. In fact, I was a part of the PFAS task force a couple of Congresses ago, specifically on that. We do a lot of work on the Great Lakes, and as I always say, it's because we can protect and utilize both the ecology and the economy of the Great Lakes. So now I'm going to get to the quick story about the GLRI. So this was created during the Obama administration. It was initially, I think it was a $250 or maybe $300 million program. And then President Obama had proposed a pretty significant cut to it. A group of us, the task force folks, got together and we said, we need to go and rectify this. Now, the Republicans were in the majority at the time with the House of Representatives, but my Democrat colleagues were working with the White House. We worked with our appropriators and we worked with the White House, and we got that full funding restored. Okay, so President Trump comes in, and he had the head of the Office of Management and Budget was a guy that I knew, who said to me, and at the time it was $300 million for the GLRI. He said, "Hey, Bill, sorry, but we're going to eliminate that." And I said, "Well, I hate to tell you, no, you're not." And he's like, "Yeah, it's going to happen." So President Trump, people might remember this, came to Grand Rapids this is while he was president, for a rally at Van Andel Arena. I had an opportunity to ride in the Beast, the limousine, with him. And myself, Jack Bergman from up north, and John Molinar, who now has part of the Grand Rapids area. Jack Bergman's goal was to talk about the Sioux Locks and the importance of making sure that the funding continued there. John Molinar had a different issue that he was hitting on, and I was hitting on the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. That in between the ride from the airport to Van Andel Arena, we had convinced him that he needed to restore the $300 million to the GLRI. We then sat down with his speechwriter, who inserted it into his speech, and then he got such a great response when he made the announcement that he was going to restore the $300 million that he actually upped it on stage by $50 million and actually followed through on the pledge. So I've talked to the president actually a number of times about specifically the GLRI. We have now moved that funding up to $450 million for the year, and we're shooting for $500 million reauthorization for 5 years. And we've asked OMB to fully fund the GLRI in the president's budget. So I think there's probably less conflict there than what you might suspect there is when it comes to the Great Lakes. And look, we all know here in the Great Lakes, you drive a couple of hours virtually any direction, no matter where you are in the state, and you're going to be hitting a Great Lake. And I think we've gotten through to the president on that. So thank you very much for that call, Holly. And I think we are going to be hitting, we got some time yet to get a couple more in. Terry from Wayland. Terry, go ahead. I think you had a question on Social Security. And again, that poll is still open. If you support President Trump's proposal to end taxing of Social Security benefits, please press 1 for yes. Or if you don't agree and you want to continue taxing of Social Security benefits, press 2 for no. So Terry, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thanks for taking my call.
You got it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I always hear all this talk, and I'm starting to get toward that age for Social Security and stuff. And I always hear the talk about making cuts and raising the age of retirement and such. And I was wondering, have you guys ever put together like an idea? Like FICA cap this year, I think is like 184, and like 90% of the people in the United States will never even know what that is. And have you ever thought of like doing like a graduated FICA return, like for after $1 million or $750,000, and then increase it all the way up to like a certain percentage? Because people like Elon Musk and Bezos will never use Social Security forever in the rest of their life.
Yep.
And to help, instead of looking at these options of raising the age of retirement, some of these other options I think would be really good to look at. I mean, just to help the benefit of the country.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. And actually, we talked a fair amount about this yesterday on the more, again, senior-focused town hall that we did. you're hitting on a number of things that have been discussed, Terry. Some of that, as you point out, that magic number is like somehow oddly, isn't hit by most people. But when you do, the name I always bring up is Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett doesn't know whether he gets a Social Security check or not, right? Because that's what he carries around and bets on his pinochle games. I have proposed and had a discussion about having a voluntary opt-out of Social Security. Check the box. Say, hey, you know what? I'm doing fine. I don't need it right now. Interestingly enough, AARP has fought me on this concept. I've even suggested having it be an annual opt-out so that you could always say, hey, I won the lottery and I blew all my winnings and now I need my Social Security back, right? But something along those lines. So when you're talking about raising that income threshold of paying into it, that is something that at a minimum ought to be explored and ought to be discussed about where exactly how high that goes. The question is, I don't want people to just simply pay into something that they can't access unless you hit some sort of mega rich level or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of discussions like that can happen. At some point, we do have to face the realities of life expectancy, though. And we know that when Social Security was put in place, the retirement age was 64, but life expectancy was 67. All right. Now, where we have retirement ages that have been moved up a little incrementally over decades that has happened, we now see life expectancy well into the late 70s and early 80s, depending on what demographic you are. And for my kids, which are 27 down to 18, that generation, they likely are going to have a life expectancy into the 90s, if not into the century mark. And the system isn't necessarily built for that. So we're going to have the courage to face that and to do something about it. And that's what we're attempting to do on a number of levels. So that is absolutely appreciate that conversation. So I think we've got time for one last one. And Janet in Ottawa County, I think you've got a question about a child with a disability and maybe some concerns there. So go ahead, Janet. Are you there with us?
We are. There's parents, aging parents like us, with adult children of disability. They are generally receiving Medicaid help and Social Security disability. And of course, we might be a minority of any congressional district, but our concerns are huge. And no matter what we do personally to prepare for what happens when we are gone, our beloved person is still going to need to be able to depend on the kind of Medicaid funding that provides health care and mental health services. It's a huge concern, and the thing that we see is what's left to cut Medicaid.
So Janet, let me first say this is exactly why we need to protect the program for families like yours. Okay, we have to. That's one of the core functions of SSI and Medicaid. Now, I served in the state legislature as well. Medicaid is unique because it is both a state and a federal program. Under the expansion during Obamacare, or the Obama administration had said, states, we're going to encourage you to expand your pool of people who are going to get covered by Medicaid, and to help with the transition, we're going to fund it somewhere between 90 and 70%, for a number of years, and then it's going to become your responsibility. And at the time, there was a number of governors, both Republicans and Democrats, who said, hey, this could get dicey for us. This could get problematic because the largest three drivers of this virtually any state government, but I know ours here in Michigan, having served there, is education, prisons, and Medicaid. Those are the three largest anywhere that you go about. And then Department of Transportation falls well below that because that's predominantly federal funds, but there are some state funds that go into that. So I will tell you that there is a report, and this is dated March 3rd, so this past week, that Medicaid itself reported $543 billion in improper payments or payment errors over the last decade. All right, $543 billion. And using data from the reviews that included eligibility checks and that kind of thing, there was an estimate of nearly $1.1 trillion in improper payments over the past decade, doubling the official reported number. So let's say somewhere between half a trillion and $1 trillion has been in improper payments. We have to root that out so we can protect families like yours, Janet, and so that we can make sure that friends that I have that have children in your similar situation are able to be protected. So deeply appreciate everybody joining us. The line is going to go dead. We had a contract that they've been kind enough to extend for a few minutes. And I thank you, everybody. This is something we will continue to do. I've got Republican and Democrat colleagues that are doing this type of thing. Hillary Skolton is doing telephone town halls. My other colleagues are doing telephone town halls in the area. And we will continue to communicate with you all. So appreciate it. Have a great rest of your weekend. God bless America. Talk to you soon.